For 8 years her mother-in-law convinced the world she was cursed, barren, a disgrace no pack would claim. Then, on one bitter winter night after her husband cast her out like garbage, an alpha king feared across territories, traveling with 5 heartbroken children, found her dying at a frozen bus stop, and saw not ruin but redemption. This is the story of a woman who thought she was defective, a pack haunted by loss, and how sometimes the person you rescue ends up rescuing your entire world. Alpha King Finnegan Macrath adjusted his collar against the wind, though the cold never truly bothered his kind. The gesture was instinct, nothing more. A remnant from before his first shift, when winter had still meant something beyond tactical considerations. The SUV's engine rumbled behind him as they pulled through the mountain pass. It was nearly 2 a.m. He'd been driving for 4 days straight from the eastern border summit with his 5 children, all wolf-blooded, all exhausted from another failed diplomatic mission. They needed to reach Silver Peak stronghold before his rivals could spin this latest council disaster into weakness. But the route through human towns was necessary to avoid the pack territories, where enemies whispered that a king without a queen was a king without stability. He couldn't keep doing this, ruling alone, raising 5 grieving pups while other alphas muttered that a widower on the throne invited chaos. The snow fell heavier now, transforming the empty road into something ancient and unforgiving as Finnegan led his children toward the gas station on the town's edge. That's when he saw her. A woman collapsed against a bus stop shelter. Her body curled tight against the wind, shaking so violently he could see it from 30 feet away. Her honey-colored hair was plastered to her face by melting snow, and even from this distance Finnegan could see she had nothing, no coat, no luggage, just a red sweater soaked through and clinging to her frame like a death shroud. He should keep driving. God knows he had enough problems. 5 children who flinched at loud noises, a council ready to vote no confidence, and rival packs testing his borders like predators circling wounded prey. But his feet carried him forward before his mind could object. "Papa," it was Ronan's voice, careful and low, his oldest, always observing, always calculating the danger. "Stay in the vehicle," Finnegan said, then reconsidered. "Actually, come with me. All of you." His wolf told him this mattered, that his children needed to see this, though he couldn't explain why. The snow compressed under their boots, and the woman's head jerked up. Finnegan saw terror spike across her features, that raw animal panic that made something primal in his chest constrict. He'd seen that expression too many times in too many contexts, prey that had given up running. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, dropping his voice to that particular register that soothed frightened wolves and humans alike. Up close, he could see her properly, late 20s or early 30s, with hair the color of autumn wheat now darkened by ice melt and gray-green eyes that watched him with mingled fear and something worse. Acceptance, as if she'd already surrendered to whatever came next. "I'm okay," she managed, but the words shattered around chattering teeth, unconvincing even to herself. "You're hypothermic." Finnegan glanced back at his 5 children clustered close, all of them staring with expressions he couldn't quite read. "How long have you been out here?" She didn't answer. Her gaze fell to her hands, blue-tinged and trembling. And that's when Finnegan noticed the marks on her exposed wrists. Dark bruises in the unmistakable shape of fingers that told stories he didn't need spoken aloud to understand. Something shifted in him then. The alpha that lived beneath his skin recognized vulnerability, yes, but also recognized something else: resilience, defiance, the kind of strength that refuses to break even when everything around it has shattered. Behind him, 7-year-old Anwen took 3 steps forward, her small voice cutting through the wind-muffled silence. "She's freezing, Papa. Like we were when Mama." She trailed off. She always did. Finnegan pulled off his heavy coat in one smooth motion and held it out. "Take this." "I can't." "You can." Not a command, a statement of fact. "My children and I are heading north. There's a diner half a mile up the road. Let me get you something hot to eat at minimum. I don't have money to repay you. I'm not asking for repayment. Lennon Perkins looked up at this stranger, this impossibly commanding man with silver-streaked dark hair and pale blue eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Hope, fragile as spun glass but undeniably there. "Why?" she whispered.
Have you ever felt worthless because someone made you believe you were broken? Drop a comment below right now, and you need to subscribe because what Lennon discovers about herself in the next part will blow your mind, and if you miss it, you'll regret it. Hit that subscribe button now.
Finnegan didn't wait for her to accept the coat. He draped it over her shoulders himself, and the woman, Lennon, flinched at the contact before the warmth seemed to register. Her fingers clutched the fabric with desperate strength. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried. Her legs buckled immediately, and Finnegan caught her before she hit the pavement. One arm behind her shoulders, the other beneath her knees. She weighed almost nothing, all sharp angles and fragile bones, and the wolf in him growled low at the evidence of prolonged neglect. "I can walk," she protested weakly, but made no real effort to escape his hold. "Not tonight, you can't." He turned toward the SUV where 5 pairs of eyes watched through the windows, faces pressed to the glass. "Ronan, open the back door." His 12-year-old son moved instantly, and Finnegan settled Lennon into the 3rd-row seat before she could argue further. The heater was already running full blast. He grabbed the emergency blanket from the cargo area and wrapped it around her shaking form. "Papa, is she okay?" 9-year-old Bryn's voice carried clear worry, the first emotion she'd shown in weeks. "She will be." Finnegan met Lennon's exhausted gaze. "There's a hospital 20 minutes south, or my home is 40 minutes north. Your choice." "No hospitals," she said immediately, fear spiking sharp in her eyes. "Please, no hospitals. They'll call him. They always call him." Finnegan understood that terror, and had seen it in abuse victims across 100 different packs. "Then north it is. You're safe now. I give you my word." Something in his tone must have reached her because Lennon's rigid posture softened incrementally. "Why are you doing this?" He could have given her a dozen diplomatic answers, but something about this broken woman demanded honesty. "Because I understand what it means to lose everything." He gestured toward his children, all 5 still watching Lennon with expressions hovering between suspicion and something that looked dangerously like hope. "We all do." The youngest, Anwen, clutched a stuffed wolf to her chest. "Are you coming home with us?" "Just for tonight," Lennon whispered, but her eyes were already closing. Exhaustion and hypothermia dragging her under. Finnegan pulled back onto the road, his mind already calculating complications. Rival alphas who would see this as weakness, council members who would question his judgment. But when he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw his children still staring at the sleeping woman with hungry, desperate eyes, something in his chest that had been frozen for 3 years began, almost imperceptibly, to thaw. Lennon woke to unfamiliar softness, the kind of mattress she hadn't felt in years, and for one disorienting moment thought she'd dreamed the entire nightmare. Then memory crashed back. Maverick's face twisted with disgust, the snow soaking through her clothes. A stranger with wolf-bright eyes, lifting her like she weighed nothing. She sat up too quickly and pain lanced through her skull. The room around her was enormous. All dark wood and stone with flames dancing in a fireplace large enough to stand in. Through tall windows she could see pine forests stretching endlessly under morning light. "Easy," a woman's voice, calm and authoritative. 2 figures materialized beside the bed, both wearing simple gray robes marked with symbols Lennon didn't recognize. "I'm Healer Marin. You've been unconscious for 16 hours. The Alpha King brought you to Silver Peak Stronghold." Alpha King. The words didn't quite connect. "I should go. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to impose." "You nearly died," the second healer said bluntly. She was younger, her hands already glowing with pale blue light. "We need to examine you. Make sure there's no permanent damage." Lennon wanted to refuse, but her body betrayed her, too weak to even stand. She nodded mutely and let them work, their hands moving over her with clinical efficiency. They checked her temperature, her heart rate, murmured to each other in a language that sounded like wind through trees. Then the younger healer's hands settled on Lennon's lower abdomen, and her expression changed completely. "Maren, look at this." The older woman joined her, and both their hands began to glow brighter. Lennon felt warmth spreading through her core. Pleasant at first, then burning, then agonizing. She gasped and tried to pull away, but Maren held her steady. "Stay still. This mark, it's deliberate sabotage, ancient and cruel." Maren's face had gone white. "Someone bound your womb with dark magic. Not just prevented conception, but suppressed something else, something powerful in your bloodline." The door crashed open, and Finnegan strode in, still wearing yesterday's clothes, exhaustion carved into his features. "What's wrong?" I heard her cry out. "Your Majesty, this woman carries the signature of Morwen Stormborn." Maren's voice shook slightly. "The Moon Oracle bloodline. Someone tried to erase it completely." Finnegan's expression went from concern to something darker, ancient rage barely leashed. He moved to Lennon's side, his presence somehow steadying despite the fury radiating from him. "Who did this to you?" "I don't understand," Lennon whispered. But pieces were clicking into place with horrible clarity. 8 years of Hadley's tea. The nausea. The doctors who found nothing wrong. The constant litany of cursed, barren, worthless. My mother-in-law. She always insisted I drink this herbal mixture, said it would help me conceive. "Your husband's mother did this." Finnegan's voice dropped to something barely human. "She poisoned you, bound you, made everyone believe you were broken." The words hit like physical blows. Lennon's vision blurred, tears she'd held back for years finally breaking free. "She made me think I was defective. 8 years I believed her. Let Maverick blame me, let them all look at me like I was cursed." She felt arms around her then, strong and impossibly gentle, and realized Finnegan was holding her while she shattered. His voice rumbled against her ear, fierce and absolute. "You were never the problem. Do you hear me? You were never broken." Lennon had been at Silver Peak for 3 days when she heard the whispers outside her door, small voices debating in urgent hushes whether guards would stop them. She smiled despite herself and called out softly, "You can come in." The door cracked open, and 5 faces peered through, guilt and hope warring on each one. Ronan entered first, the natural leader, followed by his siblings in descending order of age. They arranged themselves around her sitting area with the careful precision of children who'd learned to take up minimal space. "We're not supposed to bother you," 9-year-old Bryn said immediately. "Papa said you need rest." "I've been resting for 3 days straight. I could use the company." Lennon patted the couch beside her, and Anwen, the youngest, climbed up without hesitation. Her tangled hair fell across her face and Lennon's fingers moved instinctively. "May I braid this for you?" Anwen nodded, eyes wide, and Lennon worked gently through the knots while the other children watched. 10-year-old Soren spoke next, his voice barely above a whisper. "Papa said someone hurt you. Like how someone hurt our mama." The room went silent. Lennon's hands stilled in Anwen's hair. "What happened to your mother?" "Assassinated," Ronan said flatly. Too much knowledge in his 12-year-old eyes. 3 years ago during a summit with the Eastern Pax. They said it was political, but Papa thinks it was personal. Revenge for territory disputes. She was trying to make peace. Lennon's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry." "Papa found you," 7-year-old Kieran said suddenly, speaking for the first time since they'd entered. His words came slow, careful, as if speech required immense effort. "Like maybe Mama sent you." "Kieran," Bryn hissed, but Lennon shook her head. "It's all right to miss her. It's all right to want someone who understands. She finished Anwen's braid and the little girl turned around, beaming. When had a child last smiled at Lennon like that, open and trusting and whole? Ronan pulled a folded paper from his pocket, hesitant. I drew this yesterday. For you. He handed it over, and Lennon unfolded it carefully. A family portrait in colored pencil. Finnegan, tall and stern in the center, 5 children around him. And standing slightly apart but clearly included, a woman with honey-colored hair. You drew me into your family, Lennon whispered. You fit, Anwen said simply, and laughed when Lennon pulled her close. The sound must have carried because moments later Finnegan appeared in the doorway, ready to scold, but froze at the sight of his youngest daughter laughing, actually laughing, for the first time since her mother died. His eyes met Lennon's across the room, and something passed between them. Recognition, gratitude, understanding. Later, after he'd shepherded the children to bed, Finnegan returned. They've been like ghosts for 3 years, breathing but not living. They just needed permission to feel again, Lennon said softly, to remember without guilt. You understand? Not a question, a statement of rare vulnerability from a king who couldn't afford weakness. Beyond the windows, Lennon caught sight of 2 beta wolves watching from the courtyard below, their expressions cold with disapproval. The whispers had already begun. Your Majesty. A sharp voice cut through the moment. A woman stood in the doorway, her posture radiating authority barely contained by deference. The Beta Council requests an audience. There are concerns about the outsider's presence near the royal children. Finnegan's expression hardened. Tell the council I'll meet them tomorrow. They're quite insistent. There's talk that bringing an unmated female into the royal quarters so soon after her own marriage dissolved shows poor judgment. The children are vulnerable, and she's a stranger with no pack ties. Lennon stood abruptly. I should leave. I don't want to cause problems. Sit down. Finnegan's command wasn't loud, but it froze everyone in place. He turned to the beta woman. Lady Moira, you may inform the council that I will hear their concerns at the proper time, not when they try to ambush me in my own quarters. The children are forming attachments, Moira pressed, to someone who cannot stay. It's cruel to let them hope. What's cruel? Lennon said quietly, surprising herself, is telling grieving children they shouldn't love again because it might hurt. They have every right to remember their mother and every right to let new people into their hearts. Those things don't cancel each other out. Moira's eyes flashed. You presume to lecture me about. She's right. Finnegan's voice cut like a blade. My children have been suffocating under everyone's fear of their pain. If Lennon helps them breathe again, that's not something I'll apologize for. Dismissed. After Moira left, Lennon sank back onto the couch. I'm making enemies for you. You're giving my children back their laughter. The enemies were already there. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the quiet room. Stay, at least until you're strong enough to decide what comes next. They need you. He paused, something unguarded flickering across his features. I need to see them smile again. Lennon looked at this powerful king, admitting vulnerability. At the drawings scattered on her table, at the window where pack politics gathered like storm clouds. She should run. Instead, she nodded. I'll stay. Lennon woke without pain for the first time in 8 years. The constant ache that had lived in her bones, the pressure behind her eyes, the nausea that greeted every morning, all of it simply gone. She pressed her hand to her abdomen experimentally and felt only warmth, the curse weakening as the healers worked to unravel Hadley's poison. She found the children in the training yard, watching their father run combat drills with young pack members. Ronan spotted her first and waved, the others turning in unison like a small wolf pack responding to an alpha's signal. Len! Anwen broke from the group and ran over. Then stopped short, suddenly shy. I mean, Miss Lennon. Can we call you Len? It's easier. Something warm bloomed in Lennon's chest. A nickname meant belonging, meant chosen family. I'd like that very much. She settled on the bench beside them, and for an hour simply existed in their presence, answering Bryn's questions about human schools, listening to Soren's elaborate story about a fox he'd tracked yesterday, watching Kieran lean against her side with comfortable trust. When she laughed at one of Ronan's dry observations about pack politics, she looked up to find Finnegan watching from across the yard, his expression arrested. Later he found her in the library, surrounded by books about pack history she'd been too nervous to ask for. My children are conspiring to keep you here permanently. Anwen asked if we had a spare crown. Lennon smiled despite herself, and Finnegan moved closer, drawn by something neither of them wanted to name. That's like watching ice melt, he said quietly. Your smile, I don't think you know how rare it is. His hand brushed hers as he reached for a book, and electricity shot up Lennon's arm. They both froze, the air between them suddenly charged with possibility and danger and want. What do you truly want, Lennon? His voice had dropped to something intimate, almost wolf. When you imagine a future, what do you see? To matter to someone, she whispered. To be chosen instead of tolerated, to be. Pain exploded through her core without warning. Lennon gasped and doubled over, white-hot agony radiating from her womb as if something inside her was tearing free. She heard Finnegan shouting, felt his arms catch her before she hit the floor. Then the world dissolved into searing light. When awareness returned, she was surrounded by pack healers, their hands glowing as they channeled energy into her writhing body. Maren's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with awe and fear. The curse is breaking on its own, her bloodline is fighting back. Finnegan held Lennon's hand while power she didn't understand ripped through her veins, rewriting something fundamental. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was silver light pouring from her skin. Ancient and undeniable. The moon oracle waking after generations of forced silence. Lennon dreamed of moonlight and ancient forests, of a woman with silver hair standing before warring wolf clans and speaking words that made alphas kneel. Morwen Stormborn, her ancestor, the moon oracle who had united the territories 4 centuries ago through sheer force of divine authority. The vision shifted and Morwen turned, her eyes meeting Lennon's across time itself. You were always meant to stand here, daughter of my line. They tried to bury you, but oracles cannot be silenced forever. Lennon woke gasping, power still humming beneath her skin like electricity seeking ground. Dawn light filtered through the windows and her packed bag sat by the door, everything she owned fitting into a single borrowed duffel. She had to leave before the Beta families turned their whispers into action, before her presence here cost Finnegan his throne. She made it halfway down the grand staircase before small bodies materialized from the shadows, all 5 children blocking her path with expressions of absolute determination. No, Ronan said simply. You don't understand. The council wants me gone and your father can't afford. He laughs now. Bryn's voice shook but held firm. Really laughs. Not the fake kind he does for diplomats. Because of you. Soren grabbed her bag. We already lost one mother. We're not losing you too. I'm not your mother, Lennon said desperately, even as her heart cracked at their faces. Your mother was a queen, a Luna who belonged here. I'm just, please stay. Kieran's voice cut through everything else, the first complete sentence he'd spoken in 3 years rendered with painstaking clarity. Please. Lennon sank onto the stairs, tears blurring her vision. Anwen climbed into her lap immediately, tiny arms wrapping around her neck. We need you, Len. Don't you need us too? More than you know, Lennon whispered. Footsteps echoed and Finnegan appeared, still in training clothes, having clearly run from the practice yard. He took in the scene with one glance, children surrounding Lennon in protective formation, her bag in Soren's grip like evidence. You were leaving, not a question, and something raw flickered across his features. I'm causing problems for you. The betters. The beaters have always had concerns about everything I do. He moved closer, gaze intense. You want to know the truth? I'm stronger when you're here. My children are healing. The pack sees their future king actually smile. I'm not a Luna. Not yet, he said quietly, and the promise in those words sent heat through her veins. Stay, all 5 children said in unison, and Lennon looked at these souls who'd claimed her heart without permission. At the Alpha King who watched her like she mattered, like she was essential. All right, she breathed, I'm staying. This time, it felt like a vow.
Would you stay knowing it could destroy everyone you love? Comment your answer and subscribe immediately because the explosive confrontation coming next is something you absolutely cannot miss. If you're not subscribed, you'll lose this story forever. Don't let that happen. Subscribe now before we continue.
The messenger arrived at midnight, bloody and barely conscious. Finnegan caught him before he collapsed in the entrance hall, reading the terror in the young wolf's eyes before he spoke. Maverick Lindsay, Alpha. He's coming with shadow-touched wolves. Says he wants his wife back. Lennon heard from the top of the stairs where she'd frozen, ice flooding her veins. She'd known this peace couldn't last, that Maverick would never let her go, not when his pride demanded she suffer under his control forever. Finnegan's gaze found hers across the distance. Get the children to the safe room, now. But Maverick had always been faster than anyone expected. The first explosion rocked Silver Peak's outer wall before Lennon could move, before guards could fully mobilize. Through the windows she saw wolves pouring through the breach, their eyes black as pitch, movements wrong and jerky like puppets on strings. Shadow magic, the kind that corrupted everything it touched. At their center walked Maverick, power radiating from him in sickly waves. He'd made a bargain, traded something fundamental for the strength to take her back by force. His voice carried across the courtyard, amplified by dark sorcery. Lennon, I know you're in there. She belongs with me, Alpha King. Return what's mine, or watch your precious stronghold burn. Rage surged through Lennon, white-hot and purifying. How dare he claim ownership after 8 years of cruelty, after his mother's poison, after casting her out to die. She started down the stairs, but small hands grabbed her from behind. All 5 children had emerged from their rooms, still in pajamas, forming a protective wall with their bodies. You're not going out there, Ronan said fiercely. He'll hurt you, Bryn whispered. Maverick's corrupted wolves slammed against Silver Peak's inner defenses, and the children flinched but held their ground. Anwen's small voice rose clear. You're ours now. We won't let him take you. Something inside Lennon shattered. Or maybe it finally completed. These children loved her, claimed her, would stand between her and danger despite their fear. The oracle power that had been building since the curse broke suddenly roared to the surface, desperate to protect what was hers. Get behind me, she commanded, and her voice carried otherworldly resonance. She walked to the shattered entrance, and Maverick's face twisted with triumph that died when he saw what she'd become. Silver moonlight poured from Lennon's skin, her eyes glowing with ancient authority. When he lunged forward, shadow touched wolves at his back. She threw her hands up and screamed one word: never. Divine light exploded outward in a wave that sent corrupted wolves flying, their shadow bindings dissolving like smoke in sunlight. Maverick hit the ground hard, the dark power he'd borrowed burning away under oracle fire. Behind Lennon stood Finnegan and his children, and for the first time in 8 years, she wasn't the one who needed saving. She was the one doing the saving, and it felt like coming home. The moonlight coalesced in Lennon's hands, solidifying into a staff of pure crystallized silver that hummed with power older than the wolf packs themselves. She walked forward and Maverick scrambled backward, his borrowed shadows flickering weakly against her radiance. What are you? Fear cracked through his voice. Something your mother tried to erase. Lennon planted the staff, and the ground beneath them lit with ancient symbols, a circle of binding that trapped Maverick at its center. I carry the bloodline of Morwen Stormborn. The Moon Oracle who united the clans. Your shadow pact. Your stolen power, all of it answers to me. And I say your pact is broken." She drove the staff down and Maverick screamed as darkness ripped from his body in smoking tendrils, the Shadow Walker's bargain torn apart by divine authority. He collapsed to his knees, suddenly powerless, suddenly human, exactly what he'd always been beneath the bluster and cruelty. Lennon moved closer until she stood directly over him. This man who'd spent 8 years making her feel worthless. "You called me cursed, defective, a burden no pack would claim. You let your mother poison me, bind my womb, destroy any chance I had at happiness. And you blamed me for all of it. Lennon, I didn't know what she was doing, I swear. Don't lie to me now." Her voice carried absolute conviction. "You knew I was suffering. You just didn't care enough to question why. You never loved me, Maverick. You just needed someone to blame for your own inadequacy." He reached for her ankle in desperation, and Finnegan was there instantly, his hand catching Maverick's wrist with crushing force. "Touch her again and I'll forget there are laws against killing defeated enemies." The raw possession in Finnegan's tone sent heat through Lennon despite the circumstances. Maverick looked between them and laughed bitterly. "So you've already replaced me with a king. How convenient." "I didn't replace you." Lennon stepped back, the staff dissolving into moonlight that settled around her shoulders like a cloak. "I freed myself from you. There's a difference." She turned away from Maverick without another glance, the ultimate rejection, and walked back to where the 5 children stood, watching with wide eyes. Pack guards moved forward to drag her ex-husband away, and she didn't look back once. He had no power over her anymore, no claim, no hold. The chains had been severed completely. Finnegan caught up to her in the entrance hall, his hand gentle on her arm. "When he reached for you, I nearly lost control. My wolf wanted blood." "He's not worth your rage," Lennon said softly, then met his eyes. "But thank you for wanting to protect me. Always." The word held weight, promise, future. You stood up for yourself, became exactly who you were meant to be. Lennon looked at this man, this king who'd found her dying and given her life again, who'd let his children love her, who watched her now like she hung the moon itself. "I think," she whispered, "I'm finally becoming myself." The blood moon rose crimson over Silver Peak 3 nights later, and the entire pack gathered in the Great Hall for what should have been a simple autumn ceremony. But nothing was simple anymore. Not with Lennon Perkins standing beside their alpha king wearing borrowed finery, power radiating from her like a second skin. The beta families watched with cold calculation. Rival alphas from neighboring territories had arrived uninvited, circling weakness they thought they'd found. Lady Moira stood among the dissenters, her expression triumphant as if this gathering would finally expose the folly of harboring an outsider. Then the children stepped forward in unison, all 5 wearing formal pack regalia, and Ronan's clear voice rang through the hall. "We declare before the pack and the moon itself, Lennon Perkins is our Luna. We claim her as family, as protector, as the mother our hearts have chosen." The hall erupted. Half the pack moved to support the declaration while the other half shouted outrage. An Eastern alpha lunged forward, seeing opportunity in chaos. And suddenly, wolves were shifting, snarls filling the air as political disagreement became physical threat. Lennon's staff materialized instantly, and she moved to shield the children. Finnegan shifted mid-leap, his massive wolf form landing between her and 3 attacking rivals. But instead of fighting separately, they found themselves moving as one, his alpha gold power and her moon silver magic twining together like they'd been designed to complement each other from the beginning. When she raised her staff, his strength amplified through it. When he struck, her light guided his path with perfect precision. They fought like 2 halves of the same soul, devastating and beautiful. And within minutes, every challenger lay subdued or fled. The pack that remained fell to their knees, even the beaters who'd opposed her, recognition of true lunar authority undeniable when witnessed firsthand. The children rushed forward and wrapped themselves around Lennon despite the blood and moonlight, claiming her publicly as theirs. Finnegan shifted back to human form and walked through his kneeling pack until he stood before Lennon. Then, to the shock of every wolf present, the Alpha King dropped to one knee. "Not because tradition demands it," he said, voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Not because my pack needs stability or my children need a mother figure, though both those things are true. I'm asking because I love you, Lennon, because my children need you specifically, not just anyone who could fill a role. Because I choose you, every broken piece, and every radiant power, everything you were, and everything you're becoming." He pulled a silver circlet from his pocket, moonstone gleaming at its center. "Will you be my Luna? My queen? My partner in all things?" Lennon looked at this man who'd saved her life and let her save his in return, at 5 children watching with desperate hope, at a pack finally unified in recognition of what she'd become. "Yes," she breathed, and when he placed the circlet on her head, the blood moon itself seemed to blaze brighter in approval. The gown had been commissioned by pack weavers working through 3 sleepless nights, silver moon thread woven into midnight blue silk that caught light like captured starshine. Lennon stood before the mirror in the Luna's chambers, rooms that had been empty for 3 years, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not the broken thing Maverick had discarded, but someone radiant, powerful, chosen. A soft knock preceded 5 children entering in formal ceremony dress, their expressions solemn with the weight of what they carried. Ronan stepped forward first, holding a pendant on a delicate chain. "This was our mother's," he said quietly. "Papa said we could decide what to do with her things when we were ready. We want you to wear this today." Lennon's breath caught. "I can't. This is too precious." "You're not replacing Mama," Bryn interrupted gently. "You're just also ours now. There's room for both." She fastened the pendant around Lennon's neck with careful fingers. Soren came next with a carved wooden wolf pup, small enough to fit in a pocket. "So you always have us with you, even when we're being annoying." Anwen presented a crown woven from wildflowers that had no business blooming in late autumn. "I asked the moon to help me grow these. She said you were worth it." Kieran held out a smooth river stone, words painted across its surface in careful letters. "Family. You taught me I could talk again," he said, each word deliberate and clear. "I wanted to give you something with words on it." Finally, Ronan unfolded a small tapestry showing Silver Peak's stronghold under a full moon, with 7 figures standing before it. Finnegan, 5 children, and a woman with honey-colored hair wearing a crown. "We made this together," he explained. "For weeks, while you were still deciding to stay. We already knew you belonged here." Lennon pulled all 5 children close, tears streaming freely now. "You're not my children because I didn't give birth to you. You're my children because you chose me, and I chose you back. You're my Ronan, my Bryn, my Soren, my Anwen, my Kieran, and that's everything." The ceremony itself passed in a blur of ritual and moonlight, the entire pack gathered in the great hall while ancient words were spoken. When Finnegan placed the lunar crown upon her head, the moonstone at its center flared with silver fire, and every wolf present felt the bond snap into place. She was their Luna now, not by marriage alone but by the pack itself recognizing her sovereignty. Afterward, she stood on the balcony overlooking packlands. Finnegan beside her and 5 children arranged around them like satellites around the sun. The blood moon hung heavy overhead, blessing this strange broken family that had somehow made itself whole. 8 years ago I was told I was worthless, Lennon said softly. Tonight I'm a queen. Tonight. Finnegan corrected, pulling her close while their children pressed against them from all sides. You're exactly who you were always meant to be. You just needed the right family to show you. Lennon looked at her pack, her king, her children, and felt something she hadn't experienced in so long she'd forgotten its name.
From dying on a bench to crowned Luna, Queen Lennon's journey proves you are not what broken people say you are. Which moment destroyed you most? Comment below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now, because stories like this don't come around often, and you need to be here for the next one. Hit that button right now. Don't scroll past this.